Most of us know us for the sake of this, the start of this ritual of podcasting. Let's just welcome you, Rosa. Welcome to this episode, Embracing Differences with me, Nippin Anand. Yes, I think it's a wonderful concept. We should talk about embodiment um, and see where this conversation goes.
Your
Um,
video is suddenly all
it's
blurry. It
it's
doesn't
the way
matter.
the
Okay.
software is designed. It will give you a very high resolution at the end of it, so it's just recording in the background. I
Oh,
wouldn't worry
okay.
too much about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I should have explained this to you before, but never mind.
We can start over
So
again. Let's start over.
no, it's okay. It's natural. It's nice. Um, so let's just talk about the whole idea of embodiment. What is embodiment? I think, from my point of view, Rosa, um, the and this is a struggle that some people had when you came to London. Also, we talked about the idea of embodiment, and people have difficulties understanding that the mind is in the entire body. The mind is not in the brain, and most people think that the brain is the warehouse that makes the decisions, sorry, the control tower that makes the decisions, and the body just basically follows everything that the brain has to say. And I think, increasingly we are seeing, latest neuroscience, depth psychology has always maintained that, social psychology, um, theology and religion have always resonated with this idea that the mind is in the body, that every part of human body has a mind of its own, and every part of the body is involved in decision making. So intelligence did not come from the heaven, as Descartes would say. Intelligence is basically realized through emotions and feelings, and the movement that every part of the body moves. Every element of the body has its mind, and it moves. So when I meet you and I threaten you, your hands, your palms start to sweat. If I shout at you, your heart will start to race. If I express my love for you, you suddenly start to draw in. And how much of it is controlled by the brain? Now, I'm not suggesting that the brain is not involved. What I'm suggesting, it's not controlled by the brain. A lot of it is actually bodily reactions, which we sometimes call gestures or body language, to be more generic. But it exists in other ways also. For example, the language that we use, some of the metaphors that we use that become part of the body, they are not conscious. We use words that are totally unconscious, and hence they are embodied in us. They are embodied in us because they were part of our childhood. They were part of the way we were socialized, educated, or when we come to education, in sorry when we come to start to work, some slogans, some metaphors, some propagandas start to become part of our bodies. I'll give you an example, and this might make some sense, Rosa. So I came I started, driving is a classic example because most people can relate with driving and what it means as an embodied person. So you start driving, and somebody, in a rational mode, which means that somebody sits with you, instructs you how to drive, um, and you follow the highway code or the motorway code, whichever way you want to call it. And there are some strict rules and processes that you start to follow in a very rational mode, in a very slow mode, until you come to a point where you have cleared your driving test. You are an independent driver, uh, and the law allows you to drive independently. And through that independent driving, you learn to become a little bit more comfortable, and that is because the driving is slowly becoming part of your body. You don't have to think so much, except when you go on unfamiliar roads, or you meet with exceptional traffic, or a situation. And then finally, you move into an expert driver, which is where you can go anywhere in the country and you can drive uh, without any instruction, without any thinking. There is no thinking involved at all. In fact, that's the highest level of embodiment, where the mind starts to do everything on its own. And we call it this automatic mind. And automaticity is makes a lot of sense in many ways, because if you look at the way life has existed on this planet, I mean, the bacteria, which is probably the oldest form of life, came about 4 billion years ago. And bacteria, as much as I understand, does not have any consciousness. It's totally unconscious. um, and then life started to evolve, and it's only about 4 to 500 million years ago that we started to see nervous systems coming into place. And it's the nervous system actually that, when it's put on top of the unconscious, it creates the conscious mind. But the two have to work together. The unconscious and the conscious has to work together. And the other thing is that intelligence did not come from the heaven or from the top. Intelligence came from that unconscious, from that bacteria, which we call emotions and feelings. And then ultimately, in the consciousness, it becomes knowledge. So it all works together in order for us to be seen as embodied beings. And to me, that is embodiment. It's the working of the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. When it works together, that's embodiment. And I think that's also close to your idea of mindfulness, as you said. What happens most of the time is that we have a tendency to go back into the automatic mode, which is the unconscious mode. And what mindfulness teaches us, uh, to that the unconscious and the conscious should always stay in sync, or should try and stay in the sync. And I think the more you do that, the more fulfilling life you live, which some people call being mindful.
Well, you have said a lot. You've talked about this before about automaticity. I love that word. And Senge called it unconscious competence, that you move from conscious competence, which is when you are thinking about everything you do, and then you move into unconscious competence, where that's where most accidents happen, because you're not uh, acting and thinking from about what you're doing. You're just acting automatically. So it's a double-edged sword, being in that mode. And I think that's why mindfulness then is pulling back to you. The more expert you are, the more skilled you are, the more unconscious competence that you're tapping into, you have to balance that with the awareness and being in the present, being in the now. So as I'm saying this, I'm wondering if what you're referring to as the unconscious and conscious working in tandem, if that isn't the same idea as the unconscious competence being working in tandem with mindfulness. Do you think those two might be interchangeable?
I think the nature has gifted us with unconscious for a very specific reason, because nature understands it too well that you cannot always remain in the conscious mode. TED talks are designed for 18 to 20 minutes for a good reason, because we don't have the
Mm-hmm.
attention span to live in that space for anything more than 20 minutes. It's unrealistic to think along those lines. I think what is important is that staying in that unconscious mode, how good you are at detecting anomalies, at detecting surprises, and coming back to the conscious mode when it is needed. And I think that increasingly comes by practicing mindfulness. That is ability to actually detect, I cannot be in that space anymore. there's an anomaly and I need to come back to the conscious mode. I think that is something which, if you practice meditation, or you enjoy what you do, but what some people call it the flow. I can't, the book is wonderful, but I can never pronounce the name of the person. um, Mihaly, never mind. Talks about flow, and I think what you realize by doing things that you really enjoy, by living your passion, or by practicing mindfulness, or by practicing yoga, deep breathing, you increasingly become better equipped in that space. You know when to pull into. It's a bit like the IQ. You're not in the IQ mode all the time because it will kill you. You cannot do more than an IQ more than 10 minutes. But if you and I were talking just now, and we were not in the IQ mode. We were just having as usual conversation in the automatic mode. And you said something like, I'm having a horrible time, and suddenly I'm sensitized to that word, and I go back into the conscious mode because I know when to switch over. And I think what's what I'm referring to. If you learn how to make that switch over, I think that's I would say that's a long way to come.
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, that makes complete sense. Maybe that's what Carl Wieck was talking about when he said weak signals, you have to be sensitized. But that is also a skill and something that most people aren't sensitive to. What do those weak signals feel like? They're usually what emotions and feelings. Those are the early reactions that are going to alert you to something happening. But let's go back to what would allow a person to reach that level of awareness. And lately, I've been thinking that it isn't possible unless you have worked on yourself and acknowledged that uh, there have been events in your life that have disconnected you from this unconscious. And if you're not willing to do that work of acknowledging that and becoming aware of these things, then they just stay in the unconscious and they keep interfering with what you're trying to accomplish. So that would be why I would think mindfulness practice would be, if it were to be adopted as an organizational goal, is to develop people's ability to be mindful, that would be the beginning of that process. So we can't, for example, right now what we do is we take diversity and inclusion programs and we put them on top of the organization, and they don't work because there's no awareness. I don't know how to be aware of when maybe I have accidentally insulted you, or, gone to a place uh, where I've created friction, and I can't because I'm not connected to that part of me. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One is, like you very rightly said, the idea of meditation, solo meditation, analytical meditation, where you walk, uh, you walk a solo path and you start to think about what you're thinking. The Buddhist way of doing it, and you become a little bit more clear about or conscious of the unconscious. This is the question, right? How to become
Mm-hmm.
conscious of the unconscious? That's definitely one way of thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and it works for some people. But the trouble is that a lot of people find it very difficult, and a lot of people do not have the temperament for and patience for this kind of gradual change. So but that's definitely one way. But there's another way, which is to start journaling your dreams. Dreams are a wonderful way, because that's one way that the unconscious speaks to the conscious. It manifests itself through symbols in the dreams.
Yes.
And the trouble is that when you start doing that in the beginning, most people have difficulties recollecting and remembering what they saw in their dreams. But if you look at the work of Robertson, for example, it's classics books on inner work. um, One of the things he says is that even if you can remember one image in the beginning, from of what you dreamt about, slowly, if you start to journal it, it gets starts to get better and better each time. And I told you
Yeah, I've
about
had
it when
that
I.
experience. Like, the more you recall the memories and journal them, the more dreams that you can remember.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think one final way of making the unconscious conscious, which I think should become increasingly become part of organizational life, is that everyone should find at least one person in the organization, not if not more, with whom they can they can share their emotions and feelings without the fear of being judged. And if that happens, a lot of unconscious becomes conscious through that. And I know it's a very, very hard thing for most people to find someone who they can trust, particularly at work, because everyone is in, you and I both live in very individualist societies, and people, you never know what you say and share might turn against you in the future. But that's if you can find somebody who you can share your, who can probably just look at you and say, you look very, very disturbed today, or you don't look very good today, and or there's something about you, because the unconscious does not manifest to you unless you are a very aware person. The unconscious will easily be seen by other people, but they're scared of saying anything because they don't know how you will react to it. So if you can find somebody who you can work with at that, and this is where IQ is very helpful, because the whole process is very semiotic, is very visual. And as you are doing and
Yes.
as you are writing it for somebody else, you already start to make the unconscious conscious to them. But we call it
Yes.
chasing the confession or chasing the gift. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
when that happens, the unconscious starts to what is in the automatic starts to float up in the conscious mode. So there are ways of doing it, but it goes back to the same thing, that the quality of relationships that we don't have in most cultures, the quality of relationships where one person will see another person as an equal person, where one person will see another person as a whole person. We are so
Yeah.
quick to judge another person and reduce them into objects or a means to our end, that the unconscious never reveals. And even if it reveals, it is turned into something that is not good. A classic example of being accident investigation, where you make mock of a person by the way you even conduct accident investigations. I mean, what sort of a phrase is this? Loss of situational awareness. It's very much part of the automaticity, right? And so we
Yeah.
reduce that whole person, that organic being, into something so mechanistic in that just one phrase. So we don't have the quality of relationships where people understand another person as an organic whole being.
Yeah. I'm connecting what you're saying to the Gallup research, where one of the key questions is, I have at least one friend in this organization. And that is connected. That's one of the questions that's connected to all the performance indicators. And I think that friendship has many depths, but if a person can't say, I have at least one friend in the organization, then they aren't connected. So there is that. It's so frustrating that we have all the information we need to support these ideas that relationships are important and that we need to be respected, and yet businesses do not incorporate it into their way of being. It's not incorporated into the way that they do business with their employees. Maybe they're all saying the customer is always first, and that brings its own problems. The customer's always first in retail. It's a nightmare. It's a
It
nightmare.
is. It is. And
So
it's
I think if we put it in, I mean, in very simple terms, is to say, do you have a friend in this organization, and then amplify it. This would be somebody that you would be comfortable being yourself, that you could share if something was wrong, or that they would notice. They would notice that you are in need of help. If you don't have somebody like that in the organization, you might think about looking for another job because it's actually unhealthy.
yes, and Rob uses the word critical friend, which I think is even more powerful.
Yes.
That do you have a critical friend, or can I be your critical friend? I think that's a very powerful way to close it.
Well, it is, and I think critical friend is a step above having a friend because um, I mean, having there's nothing wrong with having an uncritical friend. Nothing wrong with
Is
that. But if you want to, uh, move up in your accomplishments and your learning, then you have to move into a critical friend.
yes,
But our
and
moms, for example, you always bring them up, mothers, um, some mothers are more critical than others, and which ones make you happier? Yeah,
yes,
we got to have at least one person that's not critical.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm working on that. I'm working on that. I am a very critical person, most of all with myself, but then I applied it to all my relationships until I realized that there's such a thing as being overly critical, and you have to move over into acceptance, and also building on other people's ideas. For example, what we're doing now, I think, I'm not criticizing your ideas. I'm trying to build on them with a different kind of understanding. Like in my case, it's the feminine understanding. And then you're going to go back and build on it with the masculine understanding. It's a good balance.
it is. And I think a lot of it, I mean, this whole idea of what you just said hinges upon something very important, subjectivity, which is that you are a unique life and I am a unique life. There is no way our the way we see or we perceive the world is ever going to be the same. No way. But at least we can learn to appreciate that we will have those differences, and it's important to I mean, there's no escape from those differences. In fact, it's such a good thing that we are different. It would be a disaster if we were not, because then we would be robots, then we would be artificially intelligent. But the real intelligence never works or moves towards perfection. It stays in the imperfect, or even if that's even a word.
The
But uh,
uncertainty. It
in the, in,
stays in
in
the
the
uncertainty.
in the fallibility, in the fallibility lies our uniqueness. And I think going back to the idea of friendship, can friends really accept each other for their fallibility? Because
Mm-hmm.
one of the most powerful way to kill somebody's being is to criticize their fallibility. I used to
Yeah.
play such good music when I was a kid, and the parents never accepted it. That was not important. And so I lost any ability to play tabla. I used to be so good at it at an early age in life. But you see, the thing is that intelligence has such a narrow definition, that if you're not good at academia or you're not academic enough, then you're not acceptable as a good son. So we chase for
Mm-hmm.
things that we don't have, and we never actually nurture things that we actually hold. But true friends realize that how important it is to nurture and to embrace this imperfect person, this fallible person. So it's very important to have friends who can embrace you for who you are.
Yes, I think that might be a good, when you're doing a workshop, that might be a good exercise to remember a time when you did something that could have hurt or offended a friend and they forgave you. They accepted your fallibility. You
And
could tap into that as a way to reconnect with why it's so important to be that way for somebody else, right? You're not going to be that way for everybody,
no,
but
and
you
I
need
just
to
wanted
be
to
that way for your kids, for your family.
I just wanted to bring this visual or this semiotic to this discussion, because this is a nice way to anchor or to finish off this podcast. That when you this is Ravana, by the way, the 10-headed demon. In the Indian mythology, by the way, we don't have the concept of devil or evil, and this is another is aspect of friendship. So when you study Ramayana, the Indian epic, you study Ramayana 360 degrees. So you try to understand this person from different angles, as a brother, as a father, as a sibling, as a son, as a devotee to Shiva, everything. So you're not just latching on to his one behavior, which is he kidnapped the wife of the god. You try to appreciate this person from every angle. If you look at the Greek mythology, Athena always carries the owl with her, and the owl has the ability to twist 240 degrees at least, if not more, which means that he can see
Mhm.
the whole picture, or he can see close to the whole picture. And that's wisdom again, that when you meet a friend sees you more than just what you did in that moment, or what the problem that you landed in, whether you were involved in a theft, or a crime, or you screwed up and you were not able to provide for your family, whatever. The friend sees you as a 360 degree, as a whole being. And that's what friends do in an organizational life. They see you much more than what you did in that moment for which you are being put into trouble. And I think that wholeness is a wonderful metaphor. Ravana is a wonderful metaphor for that, or Athena and the owl. That can we look beyond a particular attribute of a person and see them as a whole person? And I think friends do that so well.
Yes. And it's a beautiful, beautiful symbol. That I love Indian concept. I say it's philosophy. I mean, it's so deep, and I don't know, but I've always thought of the Indian civilization as being at least 5,000 years old, and I think that they've learned something in those 5,000 years that the rest of us in the world should pay attention to and listen. And as just to tie this back around to the work that both you and I do, which is to try to develop, uh, let's call them facilitators, or people that can go out into the world and become good listeners and help people develop solutions that are helpful to prevent accidents rather than blame or guilt or any of the other associations. Anxiety, produce more anxiety. That we are talking about ideas that a practitioner could look into and examine in order to develop their own ability. First, be a good friend before you can expect someone else to be a good friend to you, and build those kinds of relationships to different levels in the organization.
And it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people think that this is an idealist view of the world. And I always
Mhm.
say this one thing. Let me tell you this one thing, that if you want to discern risk, if you want to understand risk, you can only understand risk by stepping into another person's shoes in the way they see the world. and there is no way
Mm.
they will give you the gift of their unconscious mind, which is the source of all decision making, if they are threatened by you.
Yeah.
The fundamental flaw with most audits and investigations, that it's done in rational mode. It's done in a mode of defensiveness, and people often struggle that why don't people engage with us? Engagement comes from the unconscious mind, and to engage with another person, you have to take the position of a friend, not an investigator, not an inspector. It's very daunting. So, as you are struggling to understand how that person made a decision and you want to understand and improve risk management or decision making in your organization, it is so,
Yeah.
so important. You're not doing charity, you're running a business. And if the captain of the ship of Costa Concordia is cruising at zero point 0.5 nautical miles from the islands, he's because it's he receives a pressure both from the company as well as from the customer services. There is no way he's going to tell you about all that until you develop this ability to become a friend. So you're doing yourself a service by turning into that position, and this 360-degree understanding of the whole person, that people, we talk about normalization of deviance and understanding what is normal work. It is what is normal is not an agreed upon notion. What is normal to you is so different from what is normal to me. And but when we write standard procedures, we don't create space for those differences. So people give you what you want to hear rather than what they believe in. Not even doing what they really believe in. And the funny thing is that they don't even know that they believe in it. It's so unconscious in them. And this captain struggles to explain after the accident that why is the world making so much fuss about this thing? I've been doing it for so long. And that's precisely the point, that we struggle to understand another person's normal because we judge them through our eyes. If before this accident somebody would have gone on the ship and said, okay, let's have a conversation about, there is all sort of customer expectations and expectations from the hotel staff and whatnot, and there is a procedure there. Don't tell me you're just following that procedure all the time. Let's have a conversation how you actually what you believe needs to be done in order to counter all these things. And that's when
Yeah.
things start to come to surface. But we don't have friends, we don't have critical friends in auditing and investigations. We have controllers,
Controllers. Yes.
interrogators, investigators. Daunting words, daunting words. And the thing is that, Rosa, just one more thing, and I write it in my book, just by calling it something else does not change anything. Just by shifting the
No.
language, saying, "Oh, today we are going to do a learning review," does not change anything, because people don't care about the words. What they care is, what is the outcome of this investigation? What are your actions?
Yeah.
So I
I
think if
used to,
you,
in my first article, I said, if you paint the alligator pink, that doesn't change the alligator. Yeah. And I think we're coming upon a new word that's going to cause even more concern than the word relationship based safety, which is friendship based safety. But it's more guttural, right? It's more gets you down deeper into the self than the word relationship. It's friendship, and there's probably other words we should explore as well that capture that idea. But I like it, and I'm so glad that you and I are friends.
how would you like to summarize, or do you want to say a few words before we close it? Not to summarize it, but do you want to, we started off with the idea of unconscious and conscious and automaticity and mindfulness, and we came to this beautiful place that we call critical friendship. How would you like
Hmm.
to to close this conversation?
I think I did before when I was saying that it's going to be an uphill battle because we're not even accepting of the word relationship and safety. I mean, there's still a big gap in recognizing the humanity. Not because we say human factors, we think we're talking about people, and we're not. It's humanity. It's being a friend. It's being a critical friend. But you can't get to the critical friend level until you've been a friend, right? Because you have to develop that trust in order to come in and offer critical uh, advice or ways of improving. Yeah.
That's
So
true.
I look forward to. I'll start it out uh, on LinkedIn, and I will tag you. Well, it was really your idea, so you should do it about the friendship. That was your
Yes.
idea,
Yeah, well,
so you
no.
should start the conversation.
And I think it will be great because very soon we are going to meet our Brazilian friends in Rio de Janeiro. We are having a workshop there. So it'd be interesting to see what they have to say about it. Yeah,
They're
looking
gonna
forward
love
to
it.
it. They're going to love it. Yes. I had a conversation with Jilwal today and they're all buzzing about it. So, yeah, great.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So,
Good.
great. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you again. And you're looking good, by the way. You're looking beautiful as always.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.